So this is the first official episode of the Roxxy Hayes podcast. Man, I don't know how this is going to go. So this is going to be an audio-only podcast. I decided to do an audio-only podcast for several reasons. One of the reasons being I am on video a lot. I'm on video a lot. If you're not familiar with me, which I don't know why you would be listening to this podcast if you weren't, but if you're not, hello. My name is Roxxy Hayes. I do a lot. So I'm a comedian. I do stand-up comedy. I'm a writer. I'm a gamer. I'm a rapper of sorts. I cosplay. I do a lot of con performances. But primarily what I've been for the past few years is a content creator. And as a content creator, I am recording myself all the time. I'm having to get dressed up. I'm having to put makeup on all the time. And I don't want to do that for everything, I want to continue to make content and do stuff that I love and enjoy, but I don't always want to have to be on camera. So that's why I'm doing an audio-only podcast, because I don't have to be on camera. So I wanted to kind of give a little overview about like what this podcast is, what it's going to be, and, what you guys can expect from this. So first of all, let's rewind. I'm going to talk about like where the concept of this podcast came from. So I, for some years, had a podcast called Bedtime Bitchin'. It originally started off as a YouTube series, and it's pretty much like I would just get in the bed and just like talk about whatever I wanted to talk about, whether it was a movie that came out, sometimes just ranting about random daily stuff. And I really did enjoy doing that. And so that kind of developed into a podcast, and then boom, the pandemic hit. And so the pandemic hit right when I was kind of making the podcast like a more well-crafted series. And so then I had to stop doing it. And so from there, Bedtime Vision started becoming me talking to people, over Zoom or over, I think I was using StreamYard or whatever. Then, pandemic, bored, looking for more stuff to do. So I developed another podcast, which was Tell Me a Story, Roxxy, where I was talking about just different stories in my life. Then from there, people were like, hey, you do a lot of stuff. I want to talk to you about just like productivity and creativity and all that stuff. So I made a third podcast, which was called Anti-Meridian. And that was where people would ask questions and I would answer them. And then also I'd have guests on there that are also, successful in their field, and they would talk about, how they're productive and how they get stuff done. It was a really dope podcast. But now I have 3 podcasts, and I started re-recording some episodes of Bedtime Bitchin', and it just started getting overwhelming. I wanted to do Tell Me a Story, Roxxy, because that was audio only. The same thing is just like trying to edit them, trying to do all this stuff. It was just a lot. I was just doing too much, way too much. So I was talking to my homie Kazim Rahman, who was another comedian, and shout out to Kazim, because we all need a Kazim in our life, like a person that is just very analytical, and they can kind of take a problem and break it down simplistically. And he was like, why do you have 3 podcasts, and why don't you just make it one? And I was like, oh shit, that's so easy. So I decided to make the Roxxy Hayes podcast and just merge all of those episodes, and that's what this is, right? But I also wanted to go ahead and re-release those older episodes, because I feel like a lot of those episodes didn't get shine because I was doing so much at once. So that's what this podcast is. This podcast is going to be, I'm going to try to structure it, but if you're familiar with me, I'm very loose, off the cuff. So there will be some structure to this podcast, but it's not going to be crazy. I really just want this to be a space where I can examine random things that I enjoy and random things that I want to talk about. I'll have some guests on here, but a lot of those are honestly going to be the re-release episodes. More of the newer episodes are just going to be kind of me exploring different stuff. You're going to hear some clicking around because I actually want to, let you guys know what I'm doing with this podcast. I plan on, for sure, talking about, I know I'm going to have an episode on Sonic. I'm going to have an episode on Studio Ghibli. I'm going to be talking about cheese. Like, I just really been studying cheese hard, Greek mythology, just all of these things that I really enjoy and I want to talk about, but like, to who? You know what I mean? So that's kind of what this podcast is going to be. Let's see. These will be edited better. This first episode is just going up raw. So, but shout out, speaking of that, let's go ahead and shout out to the homie Queasy. I've been working with Queasy for years. He is my go-to editor for most of the stuff that I do when I actually let somebody else edit the episodes. So that's going to make this way easier and just better structured so that I can have some structure, because Lord knows I need it. I'm going to try to not curse so much on this podcast, but we already know that's not going to fucking last for long. So that's where we're at. And let's see, what else do I have coming up? I'm going on tour next year. I'm finishing up another book. I'm finally finishing up this album that y'all are probably tired of hearing about. It's called Never Knows Best, which is a nerdcore album. So yeah, I want to do some episodes kind of talking about music production and how you record an album when you don't know what you're doing. Like, I really want to just get back into kind of helping people from afar. I feel like lately I've been helping people very up close, and it's a little overwhelming for me. So I would like to still be able to help people, but juggle that with I need some space. So this is also me trying to give advice and trying to help people from not in their face. I want to make this accessible to everybody. I do have a Patreon, so I'll be releasing these episodes early on Patreon, but I also wanted to create something that everybody can listen to, that's free, that's more of me without giving all of me, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm ranting at this point, and that's not what this podcast is going to be, but that's what this episode is. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I just kind of want to let you guys know what this is, what I'm doing, what this is going to look like. Thank you all for all of your support. I wanted to just shout out some other people who have been helping me so much as of late. Once again, shout out to Kazim Rahman. Please check out his social media. He's hilarious. Shout out to Queasy Leo. You can also check out his social media. Shout out to Miss Game Queen. That's the homie, but she's also been helping me just with like structure and figuring out how to get stuff done. Shout out to my somewhat booking manager handler, Jessica Gregory. Shout out to my brother Franklin for same thing, like just supporting me and helping me and cultivating my ideas. Shout out to the homie Chinedu Ogu for the same thing, and and the homie Herman Rice for also just helping me when it comes to creativity and figuring out how to make stuff and how to put this stuff together. So thank you, and thank you to all of you. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for all the support I've been getting on social media. I went from like 20K to 70K on Instagram within the last year, and speaking 2024. So that's a lot. That means a lot to me that you guys are liking what I'm doing, and I want to keep creating quality content for you guys. So that's also what this is. So thank you so much for listening to this first bonus, whatever the fuck you want to call this episode of the Roxy Hayes podcast. For the first couple months, I'm going to be re-releasing the episodes, like I said. So there's going to be 2 days where you can check in the podcast, and then after that, I'm going to try to make it a weekly podcast. I don't want to set expectations too high, so it might change, but that's where we're at right now. So once again, thank you so much. I really appreciate y'all, and y'all have a wonderful start to your new year. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow me on social media at Roxy Hayes, ROXXYHAZE. And if you'd like to support the show and get access to exclusive content, visit my Patreon at patreon.com/RoxyHayes. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. See you next time, and stay curious.